Hello, welcome back to some more Hearthstone Perils in Paradise reveals. Today we had Shaman. I was actually kind of interested in Shaman because I was cooking up a package for a Frost Death Knight deck, and I wanted to see what Shaman cards would be added to the set alongside that to, maybe make it fizz a little bit. And I actually think it has got a bit more support now to make that deck unironically viable. Anyway, first things first, we've seen two of the Shaman cards already. We've seen Cabaret Headliner, which implied that Shaman was going to get some sort of spell school synergy. This was a 4-mana 3/3 Naga, reduced the cost of a spell of each school in your hand by 2. Malted Magma was the other one. This was the Drinkies for Shaman. 2-mana fire spell, deal 1 damage to all enemies, and it has 3 drinks of that. We've already seen Death Knight goes into Shaman, and we've seen that with Buttons. And again, this has some of this synergy of potentially a big spell school. At least spell Shaman is going to be a thing. Now, the other part of this is Shaman can use their tourists to go to Demon Hunter land. We've only seen one Demon Hunter card so far, that is Patches the Pilot, which doesn't feel like it fits in with this whole spell mechanic for Shaman. So we're going to have to wait and see on Demon Hunter before we can fully elucidate how the Shaman class is going to pull together. I will say, though, I don't think it's going to pull together particularly well. But anyway, first things first, let's go off with a good note. Caress Cabaret Star. 5-mana 5/5 Naga. While in your hand, play 2 different spell schools to transform. As an example here, we have the Caress Cabaret Star with Battlecry, draw 2 cards, and deal 6 damage to the enemy hero. Now, the way they achieved this was that they played, while this was in their hand, an Arcane spell and a Fire spell. They respectively make Caress Cabaret Star have the effect of draw 2 cards and deal 6 to the enemy hero. There are more effects for each of the spell schools currently in Hearthstone. If you do a Frost as one of the 2 spell schools, you freeze 3 enemy minions, random minions, sorry. If you do a Nature, you get +2/+2 and Taunt. Holy, you get 6 health restored to your hero. Shadow destroys 2 random enemy minions, which is a pretty powerful effect. And then Fellas deal 2 damage to all enemy minions. Now, one thing I'll say about this, I don't think all of these effects are made equally. I think some of them are wildly better than others. Destroy 2 random enemy minions, really, really powerful. Deal 6 to the enemy hero, really powerful. 2 damage to all enemy minions, kind of, falls off a little bit. 6 health to your hero as well, I think is pretty weak. And I also think the Nature one is pretty bad. So, of these, I think you're really looking at getting an Arcane, a Fire, a Frost, and a Shadow. Some mixture of those two. And even Arcane might be a little bit too weak for current Hearthstone, but it's pretty good. If you had a 5-mana 5/5 draw 2 cards, I think some decks would actually play that still. Yeah, so this is a pretty nice legendary. And actually, I think it fills the criteria of Frost Death Knight. And you might be asking how? Well, maybe it's not Frost Death Knight. What if it's Frost and Flame Death Knight instead? Maybe that is the mechanic. You put your Malted Magma in there, you put your Slippery Slope in there. You have Buttons to draw these 2 spell schools. Spoilers, I actually think you'll run 1 Shadow spell as well, so that Buttons draws you 3 cards instead of 2 cards. And then you can cast one of your Frost, your Fire, or your Shadow spell, and you're guaranteed to get a good effect. You really want the Fire effect, to be honest with you, with this Frost deck idea, because as I said, one of the reasons that Frost Death Knight doesn't work anymore is the reach isn't there on the deck anymore. If you do 6 to your opponent's face, that means the reach is getting ever so closer, so it really fits that criteria nicely, especially if you do Fire and Frost. You freeze a bunch of opponent's minions, you can use the Slippery Slope to draw a bunch of cards then on top of the Caress, and you can kind of just make it, the Arcane effect is on there anyway, right? Just with a Slippery Slope instead. And then I think, as I said, you might run the Shadow spell just in case you get really, backs against the wall situation. You need to destroy some minions on your opponent's board, and maybe you'll cast a Shadow spell and get the Destroy 2 instead. I think with that, you would probably still want the Fire one instead of the Frost one to keep putting on the pressure. And Buttons is really good for this. You only need to necessarily put 1 Fire spell in there, because Buttons will draw it for you. You might only put 1 Shadow spell in there, Buttons will draw it for you. So I think Buttons will be really good in this deck, and I think the whole mechanic together actually might come together. Also worth noting, this is a battle cry, so you can use it with Shudder Block, for example, for insane value. Bearing in mind, though, Shudder Block can't do damage to the opponent's face, so putting the Fire one on would be pointless. I actually think because of that, you won't ever do this, because I think the Fire one is probably one of the better of the entire list. Doing 6 damage to the opponent is actually very frightening when it comes with a 5/5 and some other effect on top of that. So I don't see the Shudder Block insane value into Caress thing working. You may though want to put Cresters into your Highlander Shaman deck. I can see a world where that works. Highlander Shaman has enough different spell schools along the way, and I think almost any of the two combinations you get, it is worth playing it. Some are better than others, but in general, you're going to be getting a good enough card for Standard. Alright, we also have this card, which I've snuck up here a little bit early on. I think people are sleeping on this card a little bit. Meltamental, 3 mana 3/8 elemental. 3/8 for 3. And this is because it has Taunt, and it's permanently frozen. You might be saying permanently frozen, that isn't great, right? You can't ever attack with this minion. Yes, but, you know, it's a 3 mana for 11 stats. That was obviously going to have a downside. And in recent times, Imposing Anubisas, which was a 4 mana 7/7 that couldn't attack with Taunt, did see play in Control Warlock. Now, it doesn't anymore. And part of the reason this did see play was because of Forge of Wills being a thing. You would play your Imposing Anubisas, you'd play your Forge of Wills, you'd hit the Imposing Anubisas, and suddenly you'd get a 7/7 with Rush. And if you could coin one of these out, then you're thrilled, right? Turn 4 7/7 is very scary, with Rush as well. Very, very scary, hard to deal with. And the Imposing Anubisas, if you're a control deck, just protects your face for 7. Meltamental is 1 mana cheaper and has 1 more health than the Imposing Anubisas. It also has an additional advantage, namely the Death Knight package. The Frost Death Knight package wants your characters to be frozen, ideally your opponent's characters, but if you throw down this Meltamental, Slippery Slope suddenly freezes an opponent's face, for example, or an opponent's minion, and it draws you 2 cards. In combo, it's like a 5 mana 3/8 Taunt minion that can't ever attack, draw 2 cards, freeze an opponent minion. That's actually a pretty nice package. If you play Meltamental, your Snow Strider immediately becomes 1 cost. You could play this on turn 4, and that's 7/12 as stats. Now, I do appreciate the 3/8 of it can never attack, but it is protecting, and that is still really, really frightening. Now, you can always do the fun game. It's harder to do in current Standard than it is in Wild. You could silence the Meltmetal with... Meltmetal. I'm playing Pokemon now. Meltamental with Royal Librarian. He even curves pretty nice to the 3 into the 4. In which case, you basically do get the 3 mana 3/8 that can attack. I don't think this will be a thing. I think it's just too slow for Standard. And actually, when you take the cost together, the 4 mana 4/4 is just prohibitively too expensive for current Standard, even though you're getting a 3 mana 3/8 out of it. So I think people will play with it, but it won't actually be a good thing. The other way to think about this Meltamental is it's kind of like Ice Barrier for Shaman. It's a 3 mana spell that's protecting you for 8, sort of. Now, I say sort of because obviously Ice Barrier can't really be interacted with currently in Standard. There's not a lot of way to Disrupting Secrets. And Meltamental can be hit by minion-based spells, so you might not get this Protect for 8. But in some regards, you know, you can treat it then as counterspell instead. It's like a sort of secret. And if your opponent's minions do start trading into this, Ice Barrier doesn't do 3 damage to the minions back, so I actually think this is surprisingly might be good in one package, but I don't think we'll see play anywhere else. Okay, so this gets me down to the package that I think could be a thing. You're probably putting buttons in the deck, and by probably you're going to put buttons in the deck, you need some of the Shaman cards for this Frost Death Knight build. You're putting your Slippery Slope in there, you're putting your Snow Strider 100%, it's a great cheap minion. You probably are going to put Frostbitten Freebooter, or you will at least consider it in early versions because you want to do big freezing. You're probably playing Corpse Skull. I think there will be some sort of token card in there as well to generate you some corpses. Then you're going to take the Shaman cards, you're going to take the Malted Magma. Damage to the face, also good for controlling the opponent's board if they're playing token decks. Cabaret Headliner to make these discounted by a reasonable amount, like the Malted... even the Malted Magma, I was right, the Malted Magma. That's 0 cost with Cabaret Headliner, that's pretty good value. Caress will go in there as well, 6 more damage to the face, never hurt anyone. Then you're going to steal the Death Knight cards that, you know, you could put in not from this set. Frostwound's Fury is obviously one of the big ones, that is a insane card still, even at 7 mana. Good old Thesarion probably makes that list. Marrow Manipulator also probably makes that list. Horde of Winter for more mana cheat. Frost Strike if you want to generate some more copies of these Frost Rune spells, or you want to take some of the Frost Rune spells that have other things on them, like the Blood Runes, like Eliza, the new card, which can't go into this deck list because you definitely want to run Frostworm's Fury, which means you can't put any of the other ruined cards in your deck. Again, you're probably doing some sort of token-based deck, so you're probably putting Acolyte in there for even more card draw, Cultist for AoE, Remorseless Winter for AoE, more Freezing with Might of Menethral. You might want to put the Excavate package in as well. They are Frost Rune cards, the Skeleton Crew and the Harrowing Ox. And then you're probably going to want to put some spell copying cards. This is another thing that it's missing from the OG version of Frost Death Knight. They had with, oh god, what's she called? Dark Whisperer? What's she called? Lady Dark Whisperer or something along those lines. She could copy frost spells in your hand. Maybe use the Tidepool Pupil instead to copy 3 very specific spells that might go face, for example. You could also throw in a Dry Scale Deputy. This actually has underwhelmed from what I thought it was going to be when it was released. But maybe just the right list is waiting for Dry Scale Deputy somewhere. And maybe this is the list where you want to copy a random spell in your deck. Because maybe all the spells in this deck are so good, you don't care what you hit with Dry Scale Deputy. I definitely think you're putting Incendious in this deck as well for not even just more flavor on the flame side of things, but the eruptions deal damage to the face. It's AoE damage again. Everything that can chip your opponent down just gets you closer killing them with Frostworm's Fury instead. You're definitely running Glacial Shard for the potential of Glacial Shard into your snowboarding guy that becomes, 1 mana 4/4 with the Glacial Shard. That's going to be disgusting. And then, as I said, I think you'll run 1 Shadow Spell, and I think it'll be Asphyxiate. There's actually not many other options of spell schools to run in Death Knight, or actually with the additional Shaman cards we're going to see later, that I think are useful. But this Asphyxiate is probably good enough. Buttons draws at you. It gives you an ability to remove a minion. Maybe something that's really horrible, like a big taunt minion, the way that's stopping your 5/5 dragon from running through. I think it will just make the cut. But I think even just drawing 2 cards with buttons wouldn't be the absolute worst thing. I think people will play with it. And I think this list is actually not terrible. Do I think it's tier 1? No, I don't think it's tier 1. But I think it could surprise some people. At least, I didn't expect going to the set that Triple Frost Rune Death Knight could have some sort of deck list. And I think this is some sort of deck list. Anyway, let's get to the other part of the package, which kind of emerges into the original part of the Shaman package. This is the Spell School payoff card, Razzle Dazzler. 7 mana 4/4 Naga, Battlecry, summon a random 5-cost minion. Repeat it for each spell school you've cast this game. Wow, Shaman has got Elemental Inspiration. It's even 7 mana. Elemental Inspiration sees play in Rainbow Mage currently, where you want to cast spells from different classes, so that you get the Sith effect off and you try and combo them down with Sith. Now, there are some differences between these 2 cards in terms of the quality, because their effects are actually very, very similar. Firstly, we'll talk about the value of the cards. 4/5 random bonus effect. That is probably around a 4 mana minion. Now, Elemental Inspiration with 7 spell schools will fill the board up for 7 slots, which means that level of investment, you're getting sort of in the realms of 28 mana worth of stuff. It is very consistent though. There's not that many bad things you can get with the bonus effect. I'd probably say stuff like Stealth is fairly weak on that effect. But most of the other things are fine. Razzle Dazzler doesn't need 7 spell schools for starters. They only need 5. Razzle Dazzler preloads 1 5-drop into its effect and then repeats it 5 more times to fill up the board. So you need 5 spell schools to get the 7 slots. Because Razzle Dazzler himself is a minion, right? So it takes up a slot. Now, the Razzle Dazzler obviously is not a 7 mana minion in its own right. For 4/4 stat lines, you'd probably say this is around about a 3 mana card-ish. So we'll treat this as a 3 mana, which means that you do get like the other 30 mana worth of cards. So in total, this is kind of like a 33 mana package on a card. Now, here's the thing about this. 5-drop minions are a bit hand-wavy. Some of them are 5-drop worth of value. The new Sank Ezel, I think, is a really good 5-drop to get from this. I think this is a good 5-drop minion. Doesn't have a battle cry. I think its effect is worth the 5 mana cost. That is great. If you could get all of them like this is better than Elemental Inspiration. However, in the 5-drop lands, we also have stuff like Inquisitive Creation, which is a 5 mana 3/4 with a battle cry, and you won't get the battle cry. And basically, for 3/4, you're actually getting 3 mana worth of minion. Now, if you hit that side of things, you're kind of getting 21 mana worth of effect on the Razzle Dazzler, which means it's considerably weaker than Elemental Inspiration. So you're getting somewhere between this range, and funnily enough, the middle of all of this is slightly below 28, so it's kind of hand-wavy a little bit. I think they're almost the same quality, though, because obviously Razzle Dazzle is easy to activate. You only need 5 rather than 7. But once they're fully activated, I think Elemental Inspiration is more consistent than the Razzle Dazzler. And that's going to be the major difference. You're going to get some really high rolls, sometimes you're going to get really low rolls. And actually, a lot of minions in modern day Hearthstone do have Battle Cries, and normally minions with Battle Cries have weaker stat lines to compensate for the fast action of the effect. So you kind of need more, I think, than this. It's nice it's got Elemental Inspiration in Shaman, but more, right? You're going to give us more, okay, Hearthstone team? You're definitely going to give us more. It's also worth noting that, unlike Mage, that can only do... I think they can only do 4 of the spell schools right now within their own class. Don't quote me on that one, I didn't actually check it. Shaman can do 5, though, from their base class. They have multiple nature spells, they have a few fire spells. They now have 2 frost spells, we'll get to the second one in a moment. They have Shadow, and they have 1 arcane spell, which is Wish Upon a Star. They can actually access all of the spell schools, because Charm Mechanic generates you a Fel spell. Also, their Tourist goes to Fel Land, aka Demon Hunter, so you'd expect Demon Hunter to have a new Fel spell printed. Maybe. We'll see, though. Also, they can get a Holy Spell via Watch for the Sun, so in theory, they can actually get all of the spell schools. This can also be aided, though, with the new card Siren Song, 2 mana spell, no class on it. Get 2 random spells from spell schools you haven't cast this game. Okay. This card, I think, puts like one of the nails in the coffin of this deck, or at least from the Shaman side of things. So currently, this is Discovery of Magic for Shaman. That is the first thing to say. Discovery of Magic was a 1 mana, it is a 1 mana spell. It's still in the set right now. That allows you to discover a spell from a spell school you haven't cast this game. Siren Song for 1 more mana gets you another random spell. However, unlike Discovery of Magic, you don't get to pick, so you're getting probably a below average card. Or I guess to be more realistic, you're getting like an average random spell, whereas discovering a random spell is going to be slightly above that average. So I think Discovery of Magic is better than the Siren Song. It's also worth noting that Siren Song might give you the same spell school from the 2 random spells, because obviously you can't cast the first one. So you might get 2 Fel spells from this, you might get 2 Holy spells, you might get 2 arcane spells, or whatever. You might get 2 of the same one, which actually isn't that bad because you only need to do 5 of them right now. But it's worth noting that you could get the same. You're probably going to be using this to get the Holy and maybe the Fel spell, depending on what we see from the Demon Hunter set. The Holy spell is a bit too many loops to jump through. And currently we don't know what the Fel spells are going to be. But I think the Slime Bucket route is also not very efficient. You may also want this, though, to do Arcane spell. I think these are the 3 schools that Shaman does have an issue with. Wish Upon a Star is the only Arcane spell in the set for Shaman, and it's more for a minion-based deck, right? And this is probably going to be a spell-based deck, aka Spell School Shaman. So you're probably going to want it to pick up the slack for the arcane spells. Also, Wish Upon a Star is really expensive, so I think these are going to be the 3 schools you're looking for. So second nail in the coffin, I think that other card is a little bit weaker than the one in Mage. And we still haven't seen the big payoff yet. But as I said, we have a new Frost spell in Shaman as well, which could pick up some of the slack. We have Frosty Decor. 5 mana Frost spell. Summon 2/2/4 elementals with Taunt, and Death Rattle gain 4 armor. Okay, I scoured through the Hearthstone databases for summoning 2 guys as a spell effect. Shaman already has Feral Spirit. This is kind of like a 4 mana card because it overloads. You get 2/2/3s with Taunt. So basically for 1 mana more, you get 1 more health, and Death Rattle gain 4 armor. So I think Frosty Decor is better than Feral Spirit. It should be, though, because Feral Spirit is a classic Shaman card that everyone has access to, so normally sets one to power creep the classic cards. Tomb Guardians from Death Knight. It required you to spend 4 corpses, but that kind of gave you 4/3-ish with Taunt, if you bear in mind the Reborn as well. So you get like 1 more stat line, but you don't get the 4 armor. I think that's semi-comparable. Tomb Guardians is 1 cheaper as well for all of that. Best in Shell did see a little bit of play in Druid way back when. And this was just raw stats. You got 2/7 stat line for 6 mana, both of them with Taunt. Basically, you're saying if you took 1 mana of Best a Shell, you get to Frosted Decor. You're losing 3 health on the 2 means, aka 6 in total. But you're getting Death Rattle gain 4 armor. I think I value that Death Rattle gain 4 armor about a 1 mana effect. So I actually don't think it's better than Best in Shell, this Frosted Decor. Now, it does have the advantage of it being a Frost spell and having a spell school associated with it. But it's around, at the very least, it's around the quality of Best in Shell. And that didn't see a lot of play. It saw a bit of play, but not a lot. And then finally, Cold Case. Now, I do appreciate that Cold Case had a Volatile Skeleton synergy, but eventually Cold Case started to get run into mage decks without the Volatile Skeleton payoff card because it was simply too slow. This saw some play. It was summoning 2/2/2s. You gained the 4 armor as well, which is like the Frosty Decor type effect. Now, you do get 4 less on Cold Case, because each of the 2/4s get it on Frosty Decor. So, 4 less armor, but you got 4 damage instead. And it's also a Frost spell, so this did see some play, which makes me think that Frosty Decor maybe sees a little bit of play. Now, again, this was kind of during the time where Cold Case was running the mage deck, because he didn't really have any better options. They really struggled with armor as well. Maybe Shaman's going to be in a similar boat. Maybe they're going to struggle with armor a little bit. Spoilers, I don't think they will, because Shaman has a lot of access to lifesteal anyway, which Mage didn't have access to, so I'm not sure about the quality of this card. I think it falls in the realm of all of these 4 cards, somewhere in between all of it, which is not good, by the way. It's not particularly good. One thing worth noting, though, this is a 5-mana spell, so if you want to put it into your Hagatha deck, if you're still, coping that Hagatha is a good card, Hagatha would draw the Frosty Decor for you, put it into a slime, and then you're getting the 5-mana 5/5 slime with 2/2/4s with Taunt, Death Rattle, gain 4 armor. It feels like a good payoff, but is it good enough for Standard anymore? I'm not sure. That being said, if the Spell School deck was going to be a thing, the only other Frost spell that Shaman has access to is Chill Vibes, which isn't very good either, so you're kind of screwed if you want to play this deck and you want to put a Frost spell in your deck. You're probably putting Frosty Decor in there. Is 2 Frost spells good enough for this Spell School Shaman deck? Based on kind of what Mage does, no is probably the answer. You're probably going to want to run both of these things. You could do the flip side where you then try to run from the Death Knight side of things with that Tourist, but obviously then you don't have access to the full pool of Shaman cards, which is not very good. You only get to use the Perils in Paradise cards. So I definitely think you want to build this from the Shaman backbone, and you're then going to get the Demon Hunter Tourist. And I don't think from Demon Hunter you're going to get some Frost spells, so I simply don't see it. So put another nail in the coffin. Frosty Decor, not a great card for the good payoff at the end of it all. And now put the 3rd nail in. We have Natural Talent. 3-mana nature spell. Get a random Naga and a random spell. They cost 1 less. I actually think this card for an epic is really, really underwhelming. I'll try and explain why. So currently in Death Knight, I'm going bananas. I'm going colorblind. In Demon Hunter, sorry. Oasis Outlaws does see play. It is a 1-mana spell that is Discover a Naga. If you play the Naga while holding this, you reduce its cost by 1. It's kind of the effect of Natural Talent, except you get to discover, though there is a condition on that to get the 1 discount. Now, this is played in Naga Demon Hunter. Oh my god, I'm going insane. Naga Demon Hunter. Naga Demon Hunter likes you with the Sharpshooter to play cheap spells and cheap Naga. aka Oasis Outlaw fits that bill very nicely. Shaman doesn't really have a care in the world for Naga. There are some good Naga to get, but it's random, so you're going to get it from all of the classes. So random Naga is probably better than some of the other tribes you could get, but it's still a random card. Then you get to random spells. Rogue has had a history of having random spells, admittedly only with another class on the modifier, like Clever Disguise, for example, which was for 2 mana you got 2 random spells from other classes. It kind of means that a random spell from another class, or just a random spell in general, getting one of them is probably about a 1 mana effect. When you bundle this together onto Natural Talent, you could argue that the effect is around about a 2 mana card. Now, I do appreciate you get the 1 discount on the random spell. I still think that is really, really underwhelming, though, as a whole. And I think a random spell with a 1 mana discount on it, you could say it's a 0 mana effect, but I actually think it's about a half a mana effect. So I think Natural Talent, unironically, if you wanted to be aggressive with this card and try and push it forwards, it could have been a 1 mana spell. And I'm not actually sure it still would have seen play. At 3, I just don't see it. Again, for another, like, bang, 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 Primordial Glyph sees a bit of play in Mage right now, but only in the minionless Mage deck. That was discovering a spell from your own class, and you're reducing it by 2. Basically, it was discover a spell from your finite pool for 0 mana, effectively. And for most Mage decks that sees 0 play, it's only when you have the criteria that you can't put minions in your deck does this then sneak into the list. So Natural Talent, generating a random spell from the whole smorgasbord of pool of spells that exist out there, and only discounting it by 1, I just don't see that ever being worth it. Like, what if you get Announced Darkness? You've just got a dead card in your hand. You'll never play that card. So, there's too many, very specific spells from other classes. I think this is just bad. The final nail for this coffin, or at least, you know, get out the pallbearers at the very least. Wake them up. Rogue does random spells. They have Tess. They have other support cards, but Tess is one of the big payoffs. That is a huge payoff, especially when Rogue can bounce Tess back and play it again for insane value. Mage has Sif at the end of all of this. Sif is an inevitability that you'll win the game. It's a combo card. If you don't disrupt the Sif card, eventually Sif is going to get you. We haven't seen the big payoff yet for Shaman. Sure, we've got the Razzle Dazzler, and who I'm sure is going to dazzle the board, but the Rainbow Mage deck doesn't normally win with just Elemental Inspiration. It does do occasionally, but very infrequently does it just win with that as the win condition. They need some other finisher at the end of all of this to round off the archetype. But you're saying, Andalona, we've not seen the Tourist yet. Surely the Tourist is the missing piece of the puzzle, right? Alright, here's the Tourist. Carefree Cookie. 3-mana 2/2 Murloc Pirate. The Demon Hunter Tourist. After a friendly minion dies, summon a random minion that costs 1 more. What is this card? Why does this card exist? Has absolutely no synergy with any deck that currently exists for Shaman. Nor any of the other cards that we've seen so far in Shaman. Again, a bit of a spoiler towards the future. There is another support for this evolving package. This is such a weird card. So, this is kind of where the episode title comes from. Here's my tinfoil hat. I think this effect on Carefree Cookie was supposed to be on Buttons, and vice versa. I think Buttons' effect was going to be on Carefree Cookie, or the equivalent card. And they deemed that it was too strong for the token Death Knight deck, which has lots of minions dying. They have a Death Rattle synergy. So having an effect based on friendly minions dying sort of makes sense. But in testing, it was found to be too strong, so they wanted to remove it. Similarly, the Spell School drawing cards thing isn't that useful for Shaman from Death Knight side of things, because they share a lot of in fact, I think they share all of the spell schools with one another. However, with Demon Hunter, you could get the Fell spells from Demon Hunter. Maybe that was seemed to be too strong, and at some point in their life they swapped around, but this card is really out of place right now. Let's talk this a bit more in detail, though. We've seen one Demon Hunter card, and Demon Hunter decks have had token synergies in the past, so maybe the tinfoil hat, I should take it off and, you know, chuck it in the bin. Perhaps we're going to see a token Demon Hunter mechanic as well. Patches sort of fills the bill with that. It isn't very consistent, though. You're kind of like relying on your patches being drawn, and then you're like, haha, I've drawn a patches. I play my Carefree Cookie. It charges into a minion because it needs to die to get Carefree Cookie effect, so you kind of mitigate the charge effect and turn it into Rush, which is a really bad thing to do in general. And then it dies, and you get a minion that costs 1 more, so you get a 2-drop instead. So all in all for this combo, you get a 3-mana 2/2, and then a random 2-drop. That isn't that good. Oh, and plus 1 damage. Sorry, I forgot about the 1 damage to a minion. That's pretty shit, to be honest with you, in current standard. I was like going through as well Shaman, because we don't really have a Shaman tokeny aggressive deck right now. We had it fairly recently in the form of Totem Shaman, sorry, but that's no longer a thing. That got me thinking you probably want to rush the minions in, because Carefree Cookie only has 2 health. This thing isn't going to live on the board against basically any other class for multiple turns. So you're going to want to combine this with Rush. There are not that many Rush cards in Shaman, and most of them are tied to elemental effects. Do I think you're going to put Carefree Cookie in your elemental Shaman deck? No, I don't think you will do, because it is not an elemental, basically. You could run this with Turn the Tides, though. In theory, that is then, you know, gain 3 attack, you get a 3/3 with Rush. If it dies, you're going to get a 4-mana minion on top of that, which is kind of like get a random 4-drop, 3 attack, deal 3 damage, you overload 1 for 6 mana. Oh, and then you get a 2/2 on top of that in total. That's okay. Champion of Storms, which doesn't see much play right now, and sort of a bit of play in Nature Shaman, when you use it to generate a full board of spell damage, and only that time have you ever seen this as a combo deck, could generate you a ton of Rush minions that you could evolve with the Carefree Cookie. But playing Champion of Storms with Carefree Cookie is a 7-mana turn, leaving you 3 mana to cast nature spells. I know you can discount nature spells pretty nicely, but it's still going to be a lot of ass to set all of this up, where you're not killing your opponent, you're just generating value that your opponent is just going to Reno away. It got to the point where I was like, what the hell do you run with this? And I was like, Building Block Golem maybe. That's a 5 mana 6/3 rush. It gives you a Death Rattle as well. You get 3 1-drops and a random 6-drop. That's actually pretty good value, but you're running Building Block Golem in your deck to do that. Which then got me thinking, was the idea that you were going to run like Melt Elemental, or Meltamental, sorry, or Frosty Decor, and taunt in front of the cookie? And the idea is that the taunts would die and then get evolved, protecting your cookie for future turns. Because that ain't going to happen. It only has 2 health. It's going to die. So I really don't see this card working right now. And what's more alarming is, why would you put the cookie into your deck when, even if there is a token Demon Hunter, and there are some token Demon Hunter cards out there currently, but if you're going with the Shaman with the Demon Hunter Tourist, you can only put the Perils cards in there. So you have to shut up the deck with some other cards. And realistically, I don't think you're running many of these Shaman cards in this deck. So I just don't see it working. Other worth noting things, Once Upon a Time, which is a 6 mana nature spell, gives you a random 3-cost Beast, Dragon, Elemental, and Murloc. This is a 3-drop Murloc. Maybe the pool of 3-drop Murlocs is small enough that it's fairly consistent to get it from Once Upon a Time. Okay, well, there's 6 Murlocs, so it's a 1 in 6 that your Once Upon a Time gives you a Carefree cookie. 3 of the other options are really bad. Plucky Paintfin, Sir Finley, and Cold Light Seer are all pretty understated for a 3-drop. Unless you're playing a Murloc deck, your Murloc War Leader is also pretty understated. It's a 3/3. And then Funkfin, it's also fairly understated. It is a 4/2 while it has Divine Shield. If it always had 4/2 with Divine Shield, you'd probably say this is about worth it, but as soon as you hit it one time, it goes back to a 2/2, which is below average on a card. So I just don't see this Carefree cookie thing ever working. Finally, we have some more Evolve support. Hooray! Matching Outfits, a 4-mana spell for Shaman. Transform a minion into a random one that costs 1 more, then summon a copy of it. Alright, we've seen stuff like this before in the past. In fact, even in the present, Muck Pool's on the side of things. For the evolve a minion into a random one that costs 1 more, we have it on Muck Pools. Muck Pool sees 0 play now. It has seen play in the past, and every time this sees play, it's when there are insane Battlecry minions out there. And as we'll get to in a moment, there are some pretty good Battlecry minions out there. But currently not good enough that Muck Pool sees play in any of those decks. I don't even think it goes into the Highlander deck right now. Which, by the way, I think if Matching Outfits is going to go anywhere, it would actually be into a Highlander deck as a one-off run. Let's get to the copying minion side of things. We've had choose a minion, copy it a few times in the past. They normally sit around the 4-mana effect. Similar to Matching Outfits, we've had Soul Split that saw 0 play. Germination has seen play, but that's mainly because of Druid bullshit reasons that they could just cheat a ton of mana and end up in some sort of insane combo turn. Psyche Split in Priest saw little tiny bits of play as well from what I remember. Is 1 mana more, but you did get +2/+4 stat lines on top of that, so that's actually pretty good. And actually, one of the best copying cards currently in Hearthstone is Reverberations, which is currently in the game, and is 1 mana cheaper, because actually the best minion you could ever copy is a Titan. They just give so much value, or just in general, the Titans are the best things you can copy. You abuse their effect, you get to use it on your turn, and maybe you can use your copy Titan to kill their Titan. At the very least, Reverberations is very fluid in the way that it works. You can copy your minions, you can copy your opponent's minions, you can make your opponent's minions easy to kill as well. So Reverberations for 3 mana does a lot of good things. I do appreciate Soul Split and Germination were friendly minions. Matching Outfits could also hit an opponent's minion. You could hit a really annoying minion on your opponent's side of the board. You evolve into one that costs 1 more, and then you get a copy of that card. Do I think that's worth it for 4 mana? In general, no. I think that's a really bad play. And I think just in general, the tying of Muck Pools with one of these, copying a minion effect for 4, is pretty bad, especially when you bear in mind the reason you would copy a minion is because it's got a really good effect for some reason. You're probably setting up some sort of combo. Matching Outfits evolves the minion first, so you have no idea what you're going to get a copy of. You're probably going to hit this onto, at the very least, a 5-drop minion to get 2 random 6/6s, and that's probably going to give you more value than a 4-mana card in general. Do bear in mind, though, you have to take into account the original minion, so you're basically trading 9 mana to get 12 mana. It's a 3-mana cheat on random stuff, and that's probably not good enough to cheat exchange rate. So I don't think Matching Outfits will actually see any play. I think the card is really, really weak in current standard. That being said, as I elucidated before, if you have enough good battle cries, then actually putting a 1-of of this card in the deck is probably not a terrible thing you could do. Dr. Holiday got a really good battle cry. The stat line for the minion is pretty bad. If you get a evolve on it and copy it, that's probably pretty reasonable. Similarly, Shudder Block. Once you've done the battle cry, it's actually very understated. You'd be pretty happy to evolve that. Hagatha, again, if you're willing to put that in your deck, very understated. Actually, I say very, it's pretty understated. So you're pretty content on the evolve. Even something like the new card Cavalry Headliner, very, very understated. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't have a spell skill, so the Cavalry can't even discount it to, you know, make it playable, at least, so... but yeah, maybe if you try and sneak that into your deck for whatever reason, you could evolve this. There's then some good neutral cards. The only, like, kind of, like, evolve support this class has is the Excavated package, which I think is widely regarded as being the worst of all the Excavated packages, including Warlock, which doesn't really see any play either. The payoff of evolving all of your cards into random ones that cost, I think, 3 more, right, on the Shaman package, isn't good enough. Like, it's just not good enough, so I just don't see a world where this card sees play, especially when Muck Pool doesn't see play either, which could also fill in this role for these cards. Marin as well is pretty understated. You want the Battle Cry and then you can toss it off. And similarly for the new cards, Gorgon Zormu, again, not great stats for the cost, not terrible, but you might want to evolve it. Anyway, that is all the cards from Shaman. Good for Death Knight. I'm not convinced it's good for Shaman. I think it's actually a really weak set currently from Shaman, but we'll see what Demon Hunter has in store for us. And maybe there is some sort of token Zoo Shaman deck out there. Who knows? Anyway, if you've enjoyed this, why not leave a like and subscribe? Everyone helps me out, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!